the Bucs and Cowboys could have two of the best passing offenses in football. And maybe the Steelers, too. Who knows? They led the NFL in pass attempts last year. Do we like any of the draft values? We'll talk about these groups. Thank you, Heath, for the inspiration to start today's show. Better than I started yesterday. Can't get any worse than that. This is Wide Receivers Preview Part 2, and Chris Towers joining the show. Chris, I asked Dave, Jamie, and Heath yesterday. Now I will ask you. Do you have a good answer to this fill in the blank? I want to draft blank of my top blank wide receivers.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a great answer off the top of my head, but I think generally of anyone on the podcast, I think I'm probably the most aggressive when it comes to wide receivers, and an ideal outcome is probably 4 of my top 20.
Wow, that is very aggressive. Okay, 4 of your top 20. So we'll go through ADP. Yesterday, we did average draft position through the first 10 or so. I think we stopped at Keenan Allen at 28th overall with AJ Brown. And then we've got Terry McLaurin, Allen Robinson, and CeeDee Lamb, I believe. I'll take a look now. Yeah, McLaurin, Robinson, Lamb in full PPR at 32, 33, and 34. So that's where we're going to pick it up. Elijah Moore, who was a sleeper for Jamie, being evaluated for a quad injury. He's going to have an MRI. He might miss this weekend's preseason game. Rashad Bateman, another talented rookie. He's going to have surgery, and he's going to return sometime in September. So at some point, we will talk about all of the rookies.
Did Jamie mush the rookie receivers when he said they were all going to be good?
Yeah, I think so. I think so, Jamie. All right. No more sleepers for you. Okay, so we if you want to hear about Adams, Hill, Diggs, Hopkins, Metcalf, Ridley, AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson, and Keenan Allen, that was on yesterday's show. We are in the middle of round 3 now in a 12-team league, looking at PPR average draft position on Fantasy Pros, and we're going to talk about CeeDee Lamb, Allen Robinson, and Terry McLaurin. That's the reverse order of the way they are being drafted. I do want to remind everybody something very, very important. This show might sound good. It would sound a lot better if you were listening on Sonos Arc. Today's episode is sponsored by Sonos Arc, the premium smart soundbar for TV, movies, music, gaming, and more. Stay tuned for additional details about Sonos Arc later in today's show. All right, so Jamie, first word to you. McLaurin, Robinson, CeeDee Lamb, back to back to back. Should they be?
McLaurin and Robinson should be in the same conversation, yes. I think Robinson a little bit ahead in PPR. In non-PPR, I actually like McLaurin's upside better because I think he'll score more touchdowns. Lamb is probably too close to them in terms of where they're being drafted, but not. He should be in a similar range in terms of ranking. So, this is where I think there should be some separation in terms of, where you get maybe some running backs, quarterbacks, tight ends mixed in ahead of CeeDee Lamb potentially, but they're not far off for me, at least in terms of where they're ranked.
Okay. So Heath, I know you think that Lamb should not be going 34th overall.
Yeah, I just think,
and I agree.
Yeah, I don't think. Well, and I think the difference between Jamie and I don't think he should be going ahead of Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett. Even I'm not even sure about Julio Jones. Like probably Julio Jones right now until Julio's practicing. But and it's not against CeeDee Lamb. I do think he's inside my top 6 dynasty wide receivers. I think he has a chance over the next couple of years to be just really, really special. But his numbers with Dak last year are greatly influenced by the fact that Dak was on pace to throw for 7,000 yards. He had a 17% target share when everyone else was healthy. Amari Cooper was on pace for like 192 targets in that same stretch. I think I currently have Lamb 1 spot ahead of Cooper, but they're both more 1Bs. In an offense that's always spread the ball around a lot. Michael Gallup's going to get 90-plus targets. The tight ends are going to get 100 targets. The running backs are going to get close to 100 targets. And so it's just not – we talk about places like with A.J. Brown and Julio Jones or Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf or Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs and then Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson where the targets are really concentrated. Dallas is not one of those situations or has not been. And they've got a lot of talent, so I don't think they will be this year either.
Okay, and Amari Cooper was a top 10 wide receiver in 2019, but you're going to say, but now they have 3 instead of 2.
Right, they didn't have CeeDee Lamb then. And like on a per-game basis last year, these guys were both quite a ways behind where they're being drafted. And I
Cooper-
know they got Dak Prescott, but they also don't have that
we
first
can't do
4.5
that.
games.
We can't do that, really.
Cooper
Well,
was wide
the
receiver
first
22 in points per game. Lamb was wide receiver 35.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
But-
you got to judge his first 5 games.
Yeah, who cares about? Who cares?
Right. But
Can't
that's
judge his first 5 games.
Yeah.
No, I mean, not going to judge. Like his first 5 games, CeeDee Lamb was on pace for 93 catches, 1,386 yards, 6 touchdowns. I don't think anybody is treating him like he's
Like we're drafting him. Like
I
he
think
better
a
be
lot
that
of people are treating him like he could do
Uh,
that.
Well, they okay, but maybe you know what? I'm not saying that they are perhaps treating him like he could do that, but they're projecting a jump. I think everybody knows that the numbers were inflated, right? With Dak Prescott, he threw so many passes, but I think people when they see CeeDee Lamb, they are hoping to catch the AJ Brown, DK Metcalf year 2
Right.
breakout. They are seeing this as the best opportunity.
Right. But I mean, AJ Brown was a lot better as a rookie. And the thing that I keep coming back to, like, I understand taking Cooper after him, I guess, because of the injury, but Cooper was quite a bit better than him last year. And, even with, like, if you just look at the games that Dak didn't play, CeeDee Lamb really struggled. Amari Cooper was actually still at like 9 yards per target in the games that Dak Prescott didn't play. He still played pretty well. And so the assumption that Lamb is going to surpass Cooper, which I think a lot of people are making at this point, I just don't quite get it because Lamb is the new shiny thing. But I think people are kind of forgetting that, like, Amari Cooper was a better prospect coming out of college than CeeDee Lamb was. Better testing, higher draft pick, very productive. He's been an NFL number 1 wide receiver basically his entire career. There was the one really bad year in Oakland. And then other than that, like, he's been everything we want CeeDee Lamb to be, and he's 27. So I don't understand.
Agree. He's never had a 1,200-yard season. Now, if you dig into the numbers with Dallas, he certainly could have a 1,300-yard season per 16 games because he's been on pace for that when Dak Prescott's been healthy. But Amari Cooper, I would say, has been a very solid fantasy wide receiver.
Right. But I think
hopes for CeeDee Lamb to be a star, and Cooper has not been a fantasy star.
But Cooper has been an NFL star. He's been an NFL number 1 wide receiver and a very good one. The reason he hasn't had a huge fantasy season is because, like Heath talked about, the Dallas Cowboys spread the ball around a lot. That's not necessarily an Amari Cooper problem, and that's not a problem that I don't think CeeDee Lamb is going to overcome. In the 5 games that Dak played last season, Lamb, Cooper, and Gallup actually had 51.3% of the targets from Dak Prescott. The year before, the top 3 wide receivers had 52% of Dak Prescott's targets. So there's this, I think there's just a lot of assumptions being stacked on top of one another that, yes, CeeDee Lamb could be this elite fantasy wide receiver. But when we're talking about taking him at wide receiver 11, which is where he's going at NFC, since the start of August, I just can't justify it.
Okay, but I think if it's wide receiver 13 behind, well, no, it's 12. If it's behind McLaurin and Allen Robinson, I just don't know that there's anyone going behind Lamb that is clearly someone that should be going ahead of him. I know Heath would say that the Rams guys. Jamie, This is basically where you have Lamb ranked, right? Right around 12.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he definitely belongs in this range. I think he's going to be better than Amari Cooper. I think this is the season that he takes the leap forward. You can obviously say Cooper was better than him last year. We're talking about a guy that walked off the street with no offseason, having to learn the NFL. I don't know if he's a better prospect than Cooper was necessarily, because he was still a pretty good prospect coming into the league himself. So I think we're probably splitting hairs on who was the better prospect and who tested better. I think you just look at what they want to do with Lamb, moving him around. This is something, you have to look at also team. And the Cowboys took a lot of flack for taking a wide receiver in the first round last year when they didn't have to. They took best player on the board. Jerry Jones is stupid enough to say, we're going to make this guy work and make it work and throw to him as much as we have to. You could say the flip side of that is, well, they got to justify paying Amari Cooper the contract that they paid him and giving him $100 million. But I think this is, the scenario that we've seen the last couple of seasons where the younger player takes a step forward ahead of the older player. It's not necessarily Calvin Ridley pushing Julio Jones to the side or Chris Godwin pushing Mike Evans to the side. It's both being very good. And I think that's going to be the case. Both guys are going to be very good. The value is Amari Cooper. That's the value play right now. So if you want a piece of the Cowboys passing attack, unless you really want to play it out and say, I want Michael Gallup, you let somebody else take CeeDee Lamb if you think they're close, which I do. I think they're close. Even though I like Lamb better, they're back-to-back. So I'd rather let somebody else take Amari Cooper in the third. CeeDee Lamb in the third round. If I'm getting Amari Cooper around later, that's the way you play this. That's the way you should absolutely play this game.
Yeah, and I think if we just look at this point in the draft and we take a look at the overall player pool where these guys are being drafted, and we're totally fine. We're totally fine with McLaurin and Allen Robinson mid to late round 3.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we're looking at, I think the argument for jumping on a guy like CeeDee Lamb or if it's Robert Woods or whichever wide receiver that you're really excited about in this range is, I don't really like Chris Carter. And I'm not saying this is me. This would be your argument at home if you want to take a wide receiver here. I don't really love Chris Carson, Miles Sanders, Miles Gaskin, etc. That Darrell Henderson, whatever. I like the wide receivers better here. So then you just pick your favorite one and you go for it. But I think after Allen Robinson, who's the 11th wide receiver off the board, this is the range I was talking about yesterday, the late round 3 into round 4 range. A lot of question marks, a lot of great players. You wonder about their situations. We talked about the Bucs and the Cowboys. A lot of question marks here, but also a lot of talent and exciting players. So Heath, when we look at this group, starting with Lamb and based on Fantasy Pros ADP, hold on, let me just toggle back to wide receiver. It's Lamb, it's Evans, Woods, Julio, Cooper, Godwin, Thielen. That's the end of round 4. So 2 Cowboys, 2 Bucs, Woods, Julio Jones, and Thielen. Anyone who do you really like there? Who do you target in that group?
That's the weird thing, because I understand this is the running back dead zone, and maybe the tight ends worth being drafted have already been taken. Although I take Mark Andrews in round 4 a lot. The receivers are almost in reverse order that I want to take them in terms of ADP at this point. And so Woods is the guy within that range that you just gave. He's the only guy that I'm drafting quite that high. Cooper, I've got 3 or 4 spots behind that, so I'm okay with taking him there. But I don't ever draft any of these guys because the next 2 wide receivers are Cooper Kupp and Tyler Lockett, and I have them ahead of everybody in this range except for Robert Woods.
Same, actually.
Jamie, you like Robert Woods too, and Dave had him as his breakout or sleeper or whatever. I forget who it was, but
it wasn't a sleeper. If it was a sleeper, that was questionable. Breakout's questionable. Sleeper would be just way off the chart.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. So Robert Woods.
That's when I made the joke that you should make Devontae Adams your breakout player.
And I said it out loud because I didn't understand it at first. And as I was saying it, I was like, "Oh, I probably shouldn't have said that out loud."
No, you shouldn't.
No, my bad.
Devontae Adams would have been a great breakout call
last year.
He would have.
Yeah.
He can't be a breakout now.
Probably not. Probably not. Okay, so Jamie, how about you? When you look at that group of Cowboys guys, Bucs guys, Woods, Julio, Thielen, who are the best of the best?
I like Woods ahead of the Cowboys guys. So as much as I like CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, I think Woods is in a better spot. So I would the way that I have it is Woods, Cowboys guys. I think I have them bracketed with the Rams and the Cowboys. So Kupp and Lockett I put ahead of Julio Jones. I'm just getting nervous with the injury and the fact that he's 32 going to a new team that doesn't have a high volume passing attack. The more I think about what the Rams are going to do, they're going to throw the ball a ton. So I think those guys are going to benefit. I think the new system in Seattle is going to benefit Tyler Lockett as well. So I think those guys should be ahead of Thielen. It's interesting because I think in non-PPR and half PPR, guys like Evans and Thielen, they become more valuable because of the touchdowns that they'll score. And I don't think that they're necessarily going to fall off a cliff with the touchdowns. Evans has never had back-to-back double-digit touchdown seasons, but he goes 8, 13. I think he goes back to 8. You're still okay with that, especially if you're getting him now closer to the 5th round based on our ADP on CBS. Thielen, I think, will still be around 8 touchdowns as well. So it's just a matter of, the format that you're playing in. But in PPR, I think Kupp's going to have a huge season. I think Lockett's going to have a huge season. I hope Julio's still going to have a good season. But I think those Rams guys, those Cowboys guys are in really good spots.
Chris, we haven't, you can answer the same thing. I think we'll do this for every group here. Just give me your favorites. I think you kind of echoed what Heath was saying, right?
Yeah, it's Woods for me by a decent margin. I've got him as the number 9 wide receiver. Actually, I think he's going to have a huge year. I think the QB change is going to be very, very good for him. And, maybe even the absence of Cam Akers might give him 5 extra carries, especially near the goal line, which they like to do. So I'm really high on him. Everyone else is fine. There are some guys who are being drafted later, like he said, Kupp and Lockett, and for me, DJ Moore, who I have ahead of at least some of these guys. Adam Thielen's the one that I won't be touching. I think there are real signs of decline for him. And if he had scored touchdowns at his normal rate for his career last season, I think he would have been like wide receiver 32 in points per game.
That's true, but that stat is almost equally true for Mike Evans.
Right. I have Mike Evans 19th. I have Adam Thielen 25th. Mike Evans at least did have the stretch of big games towards the end of the season where it really did seem like him and Tom Brady had figured out their issues connecting on the deep ball. That was a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, early in the season, he just wasn't throwing the ball to Mike Evans deep. And then in the middle of the season, they couldn't get on the same page, but they seem to figure it out. So I do feel a little better about him if he's like my wide receiver 2, even 3 if I go heavy early on. But Thielen, I don't know if I would want him as my flex in a 3 wide receiver league. I just think there's a chance the bottom completely falls out for him. And, if he just has a normal...
We're certainly not taking him in round 4, and that's where he's 47th overall. And Thielen, I mean, I'm even going to remove the last 3 games of 2019 for him because he was in and out of the lineup. He didn't play much in 2 of them, and he was horrible. And if you remove those, I'll give him a courteous sample size. Adam Thielen has, in his last 21 games, has had 57 or fewer yards in 13 of them.
Yep.
So that's very concerning, I think.
57 or fewer in 18 of 20 or 17 of 25 over the last 2 seasons combined. Overall.
Right. So you were a little harsher because you gave him those last 3 games. All right. So it looks like Thielen's the odd man out there. Let's talk about Chris Godwin and Mike Evans a little bit more. Really interesting players. I just have a hard time being like, well, I'm not taking these guys, too crowded, because it's just so it's just the Bucs, they're going to be so good and they're going to throw a lot and they're going to score a lot. So, you compare him to a guy like DJ Moore. How many more touchdown passes are the Bucs going to throw than the Panthers?
Yeah, I think like the thing that I said about the Cowboys and the distribution of the football is like take that times 11 with Tampa Bay. Because because Tom Brady's going to throw the ball 20+% of the time to his running backs. He just always it cut back a little bit last year, but he still did. And they went and got Gio for a purpose. And OJ Howard and Rob Gronkowski are going to get 7 or 8 targets a game, maybe up to 10. And so I don't like Evans' targets and catches last year were pretty awful for a top 20 receiver.
I mean, for most of last season, he was on like an 800-yard pace. It was like up until the last 3 or 4 games where that really picked up. And it was just the touchdowns that were saving him. He was kind of like a touchdown or bust tight end for a big stretch of last season.
He had like 2 games where he had 2 targets and scored a touchdown, right?
But what does this mean though? That you guys think Mike Evans is done? Because
no, not at all.
Not
it's
at
that
all.
I think they're going to be like a worse version of Tyler Lockett.
Jamie, what do you think? Can anybody give a little love to these guys? Jamie, are you feeling them at all?
I love the CBS ADP for them. I think that's where they should be going, which is the back end of the 4th round.
Back end of the 4th round.
Yeah. You're still, it's like, we just did a draft, right? Where it's a 12-team PPR league. You see the results on the site. I started with Dalvin Cook. And then I went DK Metcalf and Allen Robinson, my next 2 picks. So we got to round 4. It's coming back to me. I see Mike Evans may slip. And I'm like, if you tell me I get Mike Evans as my 3rd receiver starting that way, I am in heaven. That would have been absolutely perfect to get those 3 receivers there. Now, where he typically has been going in probably the NFC drafts or the Fantasy Pros ADP, that's closer to, where you have to at the back end of round 3. That's just too rich, given who some of the other receivers that are there, especially in PPR. In non-PPR or half PPR, again, if you're taking a guy that's going to score 10 touchdowns and probably still get 1,000 yards if he's healthy, because he's done it every season of his career and he's still well within his prime with the best quarterback he's ever played with and the best coach he's ever had, I think 1,008 is within range. 1,010, if you told me you got that, I'd say that's probably realistic. Now he's probably doing that on 70 catches though. That's where the PPR versus the other formats comes into play.
Well, that's
I
what
think
that's exactly what I have him at. I've got him projected for 74 catches, 1,082 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Like almost exactly what Jamie said. That just projects to be my number 25 wide receiver in PPR.
And if you look at what happened in the 11 games that they played with Antonio Brown last season, it was like Evans averaged, I think, 15 PPR points. Godwin was at 14. Brown was at 13. I think the biggest thing they all have going for them, and I think you can even include Brown here, is just they all have a high floor. I don't know if anyone in this offense, barring several injuries, can be a top 6 wide receiver. But I think all 3 of them could very easily be top 24.
Well, if you want to be a little more optimistic about it, you look at Tom Brady. He was at 7.5 yards per attempt last year. And Jameis Winston in 2018 and 19 with the Bucs was at 8.1 or 8.2. And 8.1, that's what Brady was at in the last 8 games of the season when Antonio Brown came along. So I think we're going to get even more passing yards from Brady than we did last year. I mean, per game. This could be the offense just could be better. Second year in the system. I think he could win the MVP, Brady. I think he could be that good. That might be.
How many MVPs do you have? I mean, pick one.
Steven Wilson. Just 2. I'm giving you the MVP vote is going to be Wilson 1 and Brady 2.
Nobody else gets votes.
But I'm just saying that that's right. I'm just saying that if you want to be optimistic, I think there's a little bit more there for Tom Brady that he could be even better since he did kind of hit his stride late in the season.
Right. That was the 11 game stretch I was talking about, was including the playoffs and those last 8 games.
Yeah. Evans did leave one of those early with an injury, though, so that kind of drags him down because in the first 7 games that he played with Antonio Brown, Evans was by far the best of the 3. And then in the playoffs, Godwin was the man. So I see the frustration there. You never know who it's going to be. And we all like Antonio Brown, 100th overall, right around there. He actually went 78th overall in the draft that we just did to Heath. Okay, let's go to the next group then. This is Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett. This is the Heath group. DJ Moore, I guess it's the Chris group. And Deontay Johnson. Those are your round 5 wide receivers. We'll leave Aiyuk and Chase. They're at the turn at 5-6. We'll leave them for the next discussion. So let's take a look at Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett, DJ Moore, and Deontay Johnson. Jamie, these guys are all within 5 picks of each other. Kupp, Lockett, Moore, and Johnson. Your thoughts?
Love the value for the first 2. Kupp and Tyler Lockett. I keep moving Cooper Kupp up. We've been talking about them quite a bit the last couple of days on HQ, on FFT there, because we had Jonathan Jones with the Rams, and then we did wide receiver take your pick with the Rams guys as well. And so Sportsline, I don't know if you saw this, Adam, but Sportsline actually has the 2 Rams guys projected as top 10 wide receivers in PPR. Kupp, I believe, is number 8, and Woods is number 10. So another just data point that is very much in love with the Rams receivers. I've said this, a few times since the Cam Akers injury. Peter King, who's, as respected as anybody in the league, thinks that Matthew Stafford could lead the NFL in pass attempts and passing yards. Well, who's going to be the beneficiary of that? I don't think it's going to be Van Jefferson and Deshaun Jackson. It's going to be Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. So Kupp is a star. He's been a very good receiver throughout the course of his career, and this could be his best year yet. I know Dave said Robert Woods breakout. Wouldn't be surprised if Cooper Kupp is going to have a similar type of ascension, just with the improved quarterback play.
And I said something on FFT on HQ today that probably would help explain like the way I've discussed this whole group of wide receivers. I have AJ Brown and Julio Jones. I have Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. I have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. All 3 of those duos ahead of any of the Cowboys, any of the Buccaneers, and any of the Steelers. And the difference is that those guys don't have near as much competition for targets as the other guys. Those guys are in concentrated passing offenses where they're going to get a high percentage of the team's targets.
I really, really want to see, obviously the Steelers play their first real preseason game tonight, and the expectation is that the first team offense should be out there. I really want to see how comfortable Ben Roethlisberger looks in this new offense. They keep, depending on who's being asked at training camp, it's like, oh, this offense is exactly the same thing we've always run. And then if they ask, that's Tomlin. And then if they ask Ben Roethlisberger, he's like, yeah, man, there's a lot of really different new things that I'm having to learn. This is one thing that does seem clear is he's going to have to play under center a lot more. and they're going to incorporate a lot more play action in the offense. He only ran under center, I believe, 10% of the time, and they had the lowest play action rate in the NFL last season on pass attempts. So it's going to be, I think there could be an adjustment period, and I do have Deontay Johnson ranked highest of the Steelers wide receivers. I like drafting him in this range, but I do wonder how much of the very quick short targets where Ben just kind of dropped back one step out of the shotgun and hit him for 5 yards, how much of that passing as an extension of the running game is there going to be if this offense does look drastically different? Because just by design, those passes may not be there if Roethlisberger's under center and has to drop back 5 steps.
Yeah, so pick a Steelers wide receiver at their ADP. Who's your favorite Steelers wide receiver? ADP would be Deontay at 55, Claypool at 69, and Smith-Schuster at 72.
It's easily Juju for me.
Jamie,
I think it's still Deontay.
Deontay for Chris, Juju for Heath. Jamie?
Juju.
So you like him better than Claypool?
I like him at that cost, and I like him at PPR better than
3
Claypool.
spots different than Claypool. It's basically the same cost.
But it's cheaper. So
come on, it's the same pick.
I like Juju better in PPR.
There's a lot better. It is only 3 picks, but Juju, and this is only true in our drafts. I don't know if it's true in all the other ones, but Juju has a much wider band of where he's going to be drafted. Like, you're not going to see Chase Claypool fall into round 7. Sometimes we see Juju just fall into round 7 for some reason because half the people in the league just don't like him.
Well, I mean, Chris can tell you this. We were just in an analyst draft that was half PPR that went way, way heavier at wide receiver than any other draft I've done, including the analyst drafts that I've been in. And I still got Juju. I think it was the 29th wide receiver in round 6. So, if you're just looking at the number of where he was drafted at his position versus the spot, it was a little surprising to still see him there. So I was actually thrilled. He's my 3rd receiver behind Keenan Allen and Cooper Kupp, and I was absolutely thrilled about that.
Yeah, so you guys are going with Juju. Chris is going with Deontay at their values. I think everybody has Deontay as their number 1 guy, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Among the Steelers, right? But you can wait a round and a half to get the others. The case for Claypool is kind of like the case for CeeDee Lamb, just hoping for a year 2 breakout. Claypool had 5 games last year with more than 60 yards. That is really not good. When you compare, that's fewer than Lamb, that's fewer than Aiyuk, that's fewer than Higgins, that was fewer than Metcalf, AJ Brown, and Terry McLaurin when they were rookies. It's more than Michael Gallup, more than Cortland Sutton, who had big second years. But basically, you look at Chase Claypool, did a lot of it in 1 game, and then in the playoffs, Ben Roethlisberger threw for 500 yards, and Claypool had 59 yards. He did have 2 touchdowns, but I know a lot of people who just think Claypool is going to be the guy this year. I don't know if I know a lot.
Dave does, I think.
I kind of feel that way. You know what it is about Juju is I need to know, and I don't know that we will know. Are they going to just keep him in the slot almost exclusively? That was a problem last year. His slot rate keeps going up. I think they need to move him out of the slot. I think that would help. But if he's going to just be their slot guy, then I don't think he can be as good as we're hoping he can be. Juju
he can, but we know he can be better than where he's being drafted because he was last year.
Well, I guess so. But a lot of guys are better than
Pittsburgh's offense is really hard to make sense of last season because it wasn't a good offense, except that they scored a bunch of points. And Ben Roethlisberger had like a pretty mediocre 33 touchdown season.
Yeah. Well, they had no running game. Right? They had no running game. So
isn't it crazy to think that they were 11-0 and finished 12-4? Like it's just nuts.
Well, it was a big thing. Like they were the worst undefeated team that deep into the season ever.
They were still undefeated.
Yeah.
I'll take being the worst undefeated team of all time.
Yeah, those wins still count. Yeah, it's just like Juju was better than he's being drafted, but if he had a normal touchdown rate, he wouldn't have been. That's the thing that's hard. Yeah,
but if he had a normal yards per reception, he would have been even better.
Right, and it's so hard to say what this offense is going to look like because last year's offense was such an extreme outlier in terms of volume and short passes.
And I think that's one thing with Juju too, that I think if he plays the exact same role that he did last year, he's going to have a higher yards per target and a higher yards per reception than he did last year. almost assuredly. And I think it'll probably be significantly different because he is a guy who his first 3 years in the league made big plays on occasion, broke tackles on occasion, and just he didn't do any of that last year.
Yeah, and you know what? He's had some huge plays, like 80-plus yard plays in his career, and at least 2 of them have come out of the slot. So he's not, Juju Smith-Schuster is not just a possession receiver in the slot. He can make big plays. This will be a really, really interesting team to see who the best wide receiver is.
I think Ben tries to get him paid too. I know you could say that was going to be the case last year potentially as well, but he came back to Pittsburgh for a reason. You know, I mean, he said there was other offers out there that, you know, he could have taken. I would imagine, you know, Roethlisberger, if he's better, Juju will be better and the production will be better. But it's funny because it's like we're and Heath brought this up where he's being drafted. You know, I've said this a lot of times. If you take just the outside numbers, you take the catches and the touchdowns, you'd say, oh my God, give me this guy all day. What was it, 97 and 9? And you look in the middle and you're like, ugh, you know, the yards are just terrible. So if he can still be an 80-plus catch guy, which I think is well within range, I would probably still, you know, with the extra game, put him over 90. And he gets, you know, close to 1,000 yards. That's a pretty good value for where you're taking him.
I do think, like, because I'm always the one most skeptical of some of the narratives, especially when I'm putting projections together. But the fact that Juju said on multiple occasions that, like, Ben talked him into coming back and he came back to play, I find it hard to believe that that would be the case. And then he would see a significant decrease in targets.
Yep.
Okay, so let's get back to round 5 here because we did not really talk about DJ Moore we like Kupp and Lockett there. We talked about Deontay Johnson and DJ Moore. Chris, I'll let you talk about him since you're the highest on him. I've just been reading my DJ Moore notes today and I've changed my mind like 6 times. You know, let's not forget that he had in 15 games, he had 66 catches last year. What kind of routes is he going to run? It's changed so dramatically from 2019 to 2020. He's been top 10 in yards among wide receivers 2 straight seasons. He's had 4 touchdowns both of those seasons. So, Chris, take it away. You're the high guy on DJ Moore, someone that you would be drafting in round 5.
Yeah, I mean, the case for DJ Moore is just he's been historically productive at his age. He's been basically at every age of his career, he's been like one of the 8 or so most productive receivers in NFL history.
In terms of yards, that must be.
Yards and catches, yeah, and even efficiency. And, you know, it's really just the touchdowns. I don't necessarily think there's any reason he can't score touchdowns. I think last season, if you go back and watch the tape, as they say, there were a lot of just situations where Teddy just missed. There were obvious big plays or touchdowns. I remember whichever late season game he left with an ankle injury, he should have scored a touchdown on that play, and Teddy Bridgewater threw it behind him and he got hurt. So if they get better quarterback play, I think DJ Moore could take a huge step forward. I think he's as talented as Stephon Diggs and has that kind of potential to break out if Sam Darnold made a Josh Allen-esque leap. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think DJ Moore can be a high-end, solid number 2 with bad quarterback play because we've seen it. And he's wide receiver 17 for me because I think he's pretty safe.
And he's wide receiver 21 in ADP. So I'll just conclude with this. If he's really going in round 5 and he's basically the last one in a kind of a big group before you start to get to Jamar Chase and Brandon Aiyuk and Kenny Golladay, Odell Beckham, then that's very nice. If he's going in round 4, though, if you have to make the choice, you're on the clock, you have to take Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, or DJ Moore. What do you do? Chris, I think you take Moore, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I would like point of clarification first. I'm the DJ Moore guy. Chris has
you are. I'm sorry.
I have him 16th. So
okay, I'm sorry.
I hate DJ Moore.
So is anybody taking a Bucs wide receiver ahead of Moore?
I would take Godwin over.
I would not. I would not take a Cowboys wide receiver over Moore.
Dude.
Oh no, I take that back. I have Moore 1 spot ahead of Godwin.
I would not take a Steelers wide receiver over Moore.
I do have Amari Cooper.
No, neither with the drafters.
Just ahead of DJ Moore.
All right, you want to go CeeDee Lamb versus DJ Moore, fellas? PPR bet?
Sure. Yeah,
I feel pretty good about it.
Well, you better make sure Dak is healthy.
Yeah. Dak's got to be healthy. But I really like DJ Moore. I mean, he's awesome, but I'm really worried about the touchdowns. I'm really worried about Sam Darnold.
Yeah, Lamb's going to score at least 2 more touchdowns than DJ Moore.
I think he's going to score 4 more. I think he's going to score 10. Moore's going to score 6.
Wow.
Yeah. Also, look,
this is another one where it's like CeeDee Lamb is awesome, but there's not like an objective reason why we should believe CeeDee Lamb is currently a better player.
I didn't say
DJ Moore.
Right.
No. But like, I think that's the assumption.
I don't know objectively if DJ Moore is better than CeeDee Lamb either. I have them back to back. So like if I made a bet, it would just be for fun, not because I have them a long ways apart.
I think we cannot ignore the low catches from Moore last year. You know, I understand it with the new coaching staff. He played a different role and he had 66 catches. So if he's going to be a lower catch, higher yards per catch guy, that doesn't really set up very well in PPR. And that's why I think Lamb, that's why I would easily take Lamb. But okay, we will move on now to the next group. First, though, this is not even a question. Okay, if you're going to take our advice on anything, get Sonos Arc. This speaker is incredible. It has changed the way I watch TV and listen to music. So you can experience home theater like never before with Dolby Atmos and enjoy immersive sound that fills the room from wall to wall and floor to ceiling. And by the way, have you ever watched, Chris, you ever see True Detective season 3?
I have not watched season 3 yet.
Anybody season 3? It's great. Can't understand a word that the main character says. Great actor, mumbles the entire time. Can't understand a thing. There's a feature on the Sonos Arc where you wouldn't have. I had to put subtitles on when I was watching that show and other shows too. Speech enhancement mode in the app when you're watching TV and movies. You can clarify the sound of the human voice. So when a character whispers or the action intensifies and you can't really hear them that well, the speech enhancement mode, it is so cool. And the night sound is another mode in the app that you can use. Turn down the loud effects when others at home are trying to work or sleep. How cool is this? And I just can't express to you how great everything sounds. I cannot wait to clearly hear the boos raining down in MetLife Stadium this fall when I'm watching football. I haven't been able to watch football yet, I don't think anyway, with the Sonos Arc, so I can't wait for that. But I've been watching a lot of baseball, a lot of basketball, and it just sounds great. And when I'm not watching TV, I put Spotify on, Bluetooth it over to the Sonos, and listen to music for hours, basically, on the Sonos Arc, because it sounds terrific. To learn more, go to Sonos.com, Sonos.com, Sonos.com. Check it out. Jamie, here we go into the end of round 5 and round 6. We are looking at Brandon Aiyuk, Jamar Chase, Kenny Golladay, and Odell Beckham. Let's do those 4. Chase, Aiyuk, Golladay, Beckham. How do you rank them?
Chase, Aiyuk, Golladay, Beckham.
Oh, well, how about that? Is Beckham wildly overdrafted, guys, at 67th overall, wide receiver 27?
Yeah, this is another one where the CBS ADP is, I think, better than the Fantasy Pros ADP. I believe the last time I saw he was 92nd overall for Beckham. So I have no problem taking a shot on him there. 67, no chance.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is like, there's some tears happening for me in this range of wide receivers, because I don't really think Golladay is that close to Jamar Chase for me either.
Yes.
And I've got Golladay quite a bit ahead of Beckham. So it's this is a weird range.
One thing I've been thinking a lot about with Chase, and there's been some signs of this. There were some quotes about this, I think, out of camp yesterday. But I've been thinking about it for a couple weeks. In baseball this season, it's been like the worst season for rookies in the last 20 years, at least. Overall production for rookies is way down. Big hyped prospects have really struggled. And it's because they didn't play last season. At least that's my interpretation of it. And, Jamar Chase, Rondale Moore, Rashad Bateman. There was another one of the higher end prospects who didn't really play last season, but Jamar Chase hasn't played in a competitive football game since January of 2020. So he talked about it yesterday at camp, how it was, kind of getting mentally up to speed. It took him a little while. That's kind of what he said, explains his slow start to camp. And I do wonder if that might be an issue for him, especially early on in the season. The Bengals do have the luxury of, another kind of number 1 alpha type receiver in T. Higgins and a very solid guy in Tyler Boyd. maybe Chase opens up as kind of the number 2/3 because they want to give him a chance to work his way in and get up to speed coming off a season where he didn't play. You know, I'm willing to draft him here. He was wide receiver 20, and I took him at the 3rd pick of the 5th round in that flex league Jamie was talking about last Saturday. But, that was because I hadn't had a wide receiver yet. And so my approach there was just take guys who have the chance to be, big upside contributors. But I think he's a risky play at this point is where I'm getting with him.
Yeah. Even the best rookie wide receivers almost always start off slowly. So just keep that in mind. Be patient. Nobody's dropping Jamar Chase or anything, but just be patient with it. Who's your favorite Bengals wide receiver when it comes to ADP? Jamar Chase at 61, T. Higgins at 71, Tyler Boyd at 89.
Boyd.
I think it's actually Chase for me.
It's Higgins for me. Boyd is I hate when people say this now because everybody says it, but he's a bit of a PPR cheat code. He's 90 plus catches, I don't know, 1,100-ish yards, something like that, 6 touchdowns. This is like 16 game paces. When he's had a healthy starting quarterback, he's played so much the last few years with a crappy quarterback because Burrow gets hurt and Dalton gets hurt. But when he's been on the field with a competent quarterback, Tyler Boyd has been, I keep saying he's like a Julian Edelman light, not even that light. He's a number 2 per game PPR wide receiver. But, we talked about this a couple months ago. There was some talk that maybe Jamar Chase would play a little bit out of the slot, whereas AJ Green never played out of the slot, basically never. So I wonder if that makes the outlook a little bit worse for Tyler Boyd.
Oh, I think that it definitely makes the outlook worse for Tyler Boyd, but the outlook they could almost add another wide receiver, and Tyler Boyd might still be a good value in round 8 or round 9. So that's the thing is when we're talking about CBS ADP and he's 97th, well, that's a combination of non-PPR and PPR. That makes a little more sense. We're only looking at PPR drafts right now. I don't get this at all. I actually have Boyd projected 1 spot ahead of Higgins in full PPR, but I think Higgins obviously has a lot more upside. But I like Boyd more than 3 of the guys that we just talked about going in this round: Kenny Golladay, Brandon Aiyuk, and Odell Beckham.
Wow. Well, Beckham, yeah. But you like him more than Golladay and Aiyuk, huh? Tyler Boyd.
And only in full PPR.
Uh-huh. Okay, because Aiyuk and Higgins, who we'll get to in a bit. All right, fine. I'll come back to Higgins. Let's talk about Aiyuk. And he was the number 4 wide receiver in fantasy in his last 7 games per game. He was on pace for 105 catches, 1,333 yards, and 9 touchdowns, and averaged 10 targets per game in the last 7 games of the season. The last 7 games. So that was crazy. Top 4 wide receiver per game. Yeah, and so we're taking Jamar Chase over him. Nope. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I am. I think the Bengals are going to throw the ball a lot more. We know for sure Brandon Ayuk's not going to be the number 1 target in San Francisco, or at least as reasonably sure as we can be, because the thing about both Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel is they've had stretches where they've looked like amazing fantasy players, both as rookies. Those stretches mostly came when George Kittle wasn't playing. Yeah. In the games that he played with George Kittle last season, Brandon Aiyuk was on pace for 91 targets, 59 catches, 787 yards, and 5 touchdowns, while Kittle was on pace for 1,400 yards and 130 targets. So I worry that he's a number 2 and maybe a number 2A wide receiver in a low volume passing offense.
It's such a wild card because we don't know what Trey Lance is going to do. Lance could come in and
sure,
he could favor Aiyuk, he could favor Deebo Samuel, he could favor George Kittle. It could be a more diverse passing attack where they're going to use all 3 of those guys differently. We saw 2 years ago how creative they were with Deebo Samuel. He scored 3 rushing touchdowns. So it's somewhat of a gamble to take Aiyuk, as a borderline number 2 receiver, high end number 3 receiver. That's where he's being drafted, but man, it's so tantalizing based on what he did last year to look at those numbers and say, okay, he did that with Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard, and what could he do with just, better quarterback play overall? So hopefully there's a big second season for Aiyuk. I'm somewhat confident. I think it's more he's the 1A to George Kittle as opposed to being the 2 and 2A with Deebo Samuel.
Okay, let's talk really quickly about Golladay, and then we'll move on. My favorite Kenny Golladay stat is in 2019, without Matthew Stafford. It's in my notes somewhere. He was on pace for 60 catches, 1,110 yards, and 8 touchdowns. That was with the Detroit quarterbacks on pace for 3,338 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 20 interceptions. Daniel Jones is actually better than that. So Kenny Golladay was really good.
Well,
maybe
he's better than that.
One would certainly hope. He wasn't last year.
He was good with David Blau and Jeff Driscoll, whatever. So that's just my point there.
Jeff Driscoll might be a pretty good comp.
Another guy that you're taking the unproven. A lot of people are taking the unproven Jamar Chase or the somewhat proven Brandon Aiyuk over Kenny Golladay. I wonder if the hamstring injury is part of that as well.
Of course it is. It's the combination of the uncertainty of Daniel Jones, the injury risk after he missed the majority of the season last year, the fact that he's now banged up again to start the season. This Giants receiving core has a lot of moving parts to it. Sterling Shepard has been a very underrated wide receiver. Kadarius Toney, we don't know what exactly he's going to do. Certainly he's fantastic with the ball in his hands, but will he get enough targets and opportunities?
No.
Darius Slayton, when Daniel Jones was at his best, was playing out of this world as a rookie, for what his role was an opportunity. And then you factor in that this should still be a run-first team because Saquon Barkley with the Jason Garrett offense should be the leader of the pack. So it's so up in the air. I originally started with Golladay somewhere around 23 to 25. He was in that range. And then just slowly moving down and moving down and moving down. And now the injury, it's easy to move him down. And so he's just somebody that I don't want to draft a lot of. And I have him on one of my dynasty rosters, and it's okay. He is what he is. It's hard to trade him for fair value at this point because of the injury. But I just don't think he's anything more than a number 3 fantasy receiver. You're going to have to bank on him scoring a lot of touchdowns. And I don't know if he's going to do that with Daniel Jones.
And he's one of the more format dependent receivers in fantasy, or at least in my projections. I've got him actually as a number 2 wide receiver in non-PPR. But he's never earned 120 targets, never had more than 70 catches in a season. And now he's like, I don't know that he necessarily is going to see a lot more targets in this offense.
Yeah.
All right, let's go a little faster here. We get to late round 6 and into round 7. We've got exciting play. I still think we got some exciting players here. You guys tell me if I'm wrong, but I still think there's a ton of upside still on the board. We haven't reached the point where it's like, I'll settle. We got Claypool, Higgins, Juju, Sutton, Devontae Smith. Claypool, Higgins, Juju, Sutton, Devontae Smith. Jamie, what do you think about this group?
I like this group a lot. Higgins is getting pushed down because of the addition of Jamar Chase. And, by some accounts, he's been their best receiver in camp. He was great last year with Burrow. I think he has a chance to be great, even with Chase being there and just, hopefully not losing too many targets with the addition of Chase. But, there was over 100 targets to be dispersed without A.J. Green there. So, Higgins, I love a lot. Claypool, I think, is fantastic. You've heard me say this a lot. If Roethlisberger's elbow is right and they challenge down the field more, he could be the best Steelers wide receiver. It wouldn't be a shock. He's got so much potential. Brian McFadden, who knows the Steelers as well as anybody, one of our NFL analysts on HQ. He's on the All Things Covered podcast with his cousin, Patrick Peterson. He said, and I asked him this, if you were lining up right now to play the Steelers, which guy scares you the most? And he says Claypool. And that's because he feels like he can do everything. He can play inside, play outside, speed, physical, just a beast. Yeah. And so he's a great, wide receiver to target in this range. So those two guys, the 2 sophomores, are the ones that, get me the most excited. But I hope Devontae Smith is healthy. Man, he could be so good based on what you saw last year and leading this team in targets. And that's something to buy into. Anytime you can find a target leader this late, it's a great situation to be in.
Yeah, and this is definitely. Let's talk about it more from a broader sense, right? You got Claypool, Higgins, Juju, Sutton, and Devontae Smith. Then there's a 7-pick gap, and then the next group of wide receivers is Chark, Jeudy. It won't be Chark anymore. You got to figure, but Chark, Jeudy, Robbie Anderson, Brandon Cooks, Tyler Boyd. Well, still guys that I'm sure you'd be happy with as your number 3 guy, right?
Anderson is a steal here. My God.
Yeah, but that there might be one player for everyone that I feel that way about Brandon Cooks.
I think
everybody feels that way about Tyler Boyd. Right?
Yeah, I think Anderson, Cooks, and Boyd, all 3, I think what you were about to say was that Higgins, Juju, Sutton, is there a drop after that group? And there's 3 guys in the next group that I think really belong up in that group.
But do they have the same upside? That might be the difference. So you could see Higgins having a crazy, top 12 season. I don't know if can you really see that from anyone in this group of Chark, Jeudy, Anderson,
Jeudy 100%.
Yeah,
I think Jeudy is as talented as anyone from that class. I think the quarterback play has to be better in Denver this season, no matter who it is. Either Drew Lock plays well enough to keep the job, or Teddy Bridgewater provides a solid floor. Jeudy has been drawing rave reviews from camp. He's an incredible route runner. And last season, he showed the ability to both make plays with the ball in his hands and make plays down the field. Obviously, the drops are concerned, but if you're worried about the fact that he dropped 10 passes and 6 in one game, that was a really bad one. He had 140 yards and a touchdown the following game after the big drop game. And I think you'd be looking at the wrong thing. The fact that he was open enough as a rookie to get as many targets as he did, I think he's a special talent, and I could absolutely see us talking about Jerry Jeudy as a top 12 wide receiver next season.
So somebody with Denver, I don't think it was Vic Fangio, and I don't think it was Pat Shermer. Could have been Teddy Bridgewater, but I don't know who it was, so I don't want to attribute it. But somebody said watching Jerry Jeudy run routes, they don't know if he has ACLs.
Yeah, that was Teddy.
He's just making so many moves and so many cuts that it just kind of defies logic. Chris is right. I would take Jeudy over Cortland Sutton. And they're close. I think both have the chance, but this is kind of like the younger player taking the step forward ahead of the veteran. And you say that because Cortland Sutton's only a 4-year guy, but if Sutton was right, and I think Sutton's going to end up falling behind Jeudy because the reports haven't exactly been glowing about Sutton, but they've been better lately. That Sutton can end up being a really good value pick as well, because I do think that if Drew Lock takes that next step, as Chris alluded to, or maybe it is Teddy Bridgewater, but I do think it's better for them if Lock is better. Then those guys could be fantastic. Noah Fant as well, because there's so much talent in this receiving core that I think we were all kind of crossing our fingers a little bit that if Aaron Rodgers was going somewhere, it was going to be Denver, because just what this offense could have looked like.
I think Cortland Sutton and Kenny Golladay are basically the same guy, and at this point, given that they're both working their way back from something, I have them ranked right next to each other.
Same.
I will say, even before the finger injury, DJ Chark was outside of my top 40. I'm not sure. Like, almost like 48% of his receiving yards and 5 of his 8 touchdowns in 2019 came in the first 5 games. Basically, since then, he's been like a 52 yards per game guy.
Yeah.
I know the quarterback play hasn't been great, and we're expecting more, but he also has more competition for targets with LaVisca rising. I think Marvin Jones is going to have a significant role, and they're probably not going to pass the ball 611 times or whatever it was last season.
He might not. He might have the same quarterback. Still competition.
Yeah. So, right. That's DJ Chark. He's currently wide receiver 33, 83rd overall, but expect that to be a little bit lower. I think when you look at just comparing the two groups, it's always hard when I say, here's a group of 5 and here's a group of 5. And I try to make a generalization about the two groups because you can pick one player in each and say, no, it doesn't apply. But Claypool, Higgins, Juju, Sutton, Devontae Smith versus Chark, Jeudy, Robbie Anderson, Cooks, Tyler Boyd. I do feel like there's more upside in the first group overall than the second group. But we're still talking about if you wait to draft your number 3 receiver, I mean, this is wide receiver up through wide receiver 37 is Tyler Boyd, so it makes sense. These are still guys that, for the most part, you can feel comfortable with as your number 3 receiver, particularly in a PPR league if it's Tyler Boyd. But maybe you just feel like maybe the general public just feels like Claypool, Higgins, those two in particular have bigger upside, which, they probably do compared to like Brandon Cooks and Tyler Boyd. Fair? So, did I sum it up appropriately?
Yes.
More or less.
All right. Yeah, I know. You get into the weeds and this guy.
Cooks and Boyd are different kinds of players, but I think that mostly makes sense.
Right. So then we go to, now do we still feel comfortable with these guys as our number 3? How about Deebo Samuel? We're at 93 overall. We're at wide receiver 38. Deebo Samuel, Will Fuller, Antonio Brown. Also, there's a player I skipped in this, and it's Michael Thomas. So tell me right now, where should Michael Thomas be drafted? Let's start with that. Heath, when would you draft Michael Thomas?
It's It totally comes down to my roster construction, but I generally start thinking about it in round 8.
Okay.
Around
Easier to do if you have an IR spot, obviously.
Yes.
Then we'll talk about this group. Deebo Samuel, Will Fuller, Antonio Brown. Jamie, those 3, Deebo, Fuller, Brown. Feel good about them as your number 3 receiver?
No, not at all. These are number 4 receivers for me.
I love Will Fuller.
I feel really good about it. Antonio Brown as my number 3 receiver.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Marquise Brown. Excuse me. No, I don't feel good about him as a number 3 receiver, but I do think that Brown is the best of this group.
Antonio Brown. Okay.
Yeah.
You love Will Fuller, Chris.
I think
love
Fuller's
Will
the best.
Fuller.
Fuller
I
was
love Will Fuller too. Let's go.
The guy breaks your heart every year over and over and over again. And he's not healthy now. Has practiced once with his new team.
But keep in mind, he's got an extra week to get healthy. That's
He hasn't ever. He's practiced once with his new team.
yeah, exactly. Look,
One time.
right, and he's wide receiver 39. So, like, yeah, you don't have to invest in him. You can get him after the 100th pick. This is a guy who last season was 0.2 points per game behind AJ Brown.
It's totally different, though.
It is.
It
is. Yes, Deshaun Watson is not his quarterback, but
Will Fuller.
What's that?
Yes, you
That's
can.
the rule that you can't
Nobody
use per game
passed
stats
that.
for Will Fuller.
Nobody passed that rule. I was
Sure,
on
you
it.
can. He's the number 39 wide receiver. If you get 11 games where he's a top 10 wide receiver per game, that's an amazing pick.
He's not doing that, though.
We saw him play last season as a legitimate number 1 wide
Maybe
receiver.
juiced up.
Okay, that's fine.
Certainly.
Those effects,
Maybe.
those effects stay. Like that is like a thing across sports. Guys who take PEDs, you don't see their performance decline.
I think you do
I'm
see
I
that.
don't know.
thrilled
He
that
may not be healthy.
I'm
He's gonna
thrilled
get
that
him
Will
on the
Fuller.
field.
I'm
He's
thrilled
not
that Will Fuller
practicing
took
right now.
PEDs.
It's
right.
a
No, that's
terrible
fine.
situation.
He's wide receiver 39. Like,
Yeah, I see Chris's point here. I mean, I
at this
agree.
spot, it's fine. At this spot, it's fine. But I don't think he's doing anything close to what he did a year ago.
I think he absolutely could. I like, yes,
He
he's
absolutely
not
could.
playing
Of
with
course he
Deshaun
could.
Watson.
I mean, anybody could.
No, but Chris is that's not what Chris.
Right, but he's done it.
with
Right.
Deshaun
He did it
Watson.
with a better quarterback and maybe on something.
Again, I'm glad he took PEDs. He's still going to have those benefits. And Tua Tagovailoa is
I'm
one of the
clipping
most
that.
talented quarterbacks in the league.
I'm clipping that. and put it on the
Oh,
top
come
of the
on.
show. I'm glad he put. I'm glad.
Jamie, do you think Joe Burrow is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league?
I think what I saw from Joe Burrow in the NFL proves that he is a more talented quarterback right now than Tua. Yes.
Do you think it's fair to judge Joe Burrow right now based on his talent level? Like what we see in training camp?
I think it's probably fair to judge them both equally. Yes.
Right. So Tagovailoa is
But I
having
have an
amazing
NFL sample
training.
size of what Joe Burrow did versus
Right.
an
But
NFL
he's coming
sample
back
size
from
of what Tua did. I don't really care about training camps. I see the lights on.
Right. But he's coming back from a serious injury, just like Tua was last season. He wasn't fully practicing early on. He didn't have a full training camp.
Oh,
I think
Tua's
he
going to be
could be
better.
awesome.
Absolutely, but he's not Deshaun
Like,
Watson though.
He was a comparable.
And Fuller did all of this last year with one guy around him in Brandon Cooks, who's clearly better than anything Will Fuller has around him right now. But the group that he has around him right now is more talented than what the Texans had last year.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's a quarterback downgrade with a wide receiver upgrade.
I don't disagree with any of that, but I think the Dolphins are going to throw more than the Texans did. And yeah, okay, maybe he doesn't have to be a top 10 wide receiver per game to be worth this price.
Yeah, no, right. Everybody
He
agrees.
can be a top
Everybody-
15.
Price tag is great. Absolutely, price tag is great.
We don't need to even argue with this. Everybody agrees that he has averaged 10.7 yards per target in his last 3 seasons. That is phenomenal. He led the NFL at 11.7 last year. Some people think Will Fuller's great. I think half of us.
I think he's great. I just don't like the situation. I mean, the fact you're already down a game. So for a guy that's never played more than 11 games, or at least not 11 games since his rookie
Probably
season,
doesn't matter because you figure in week 1, you really don't have to
It's
start.
one less chance for him to get hurt.
That's
But-
true.
but again, you're already
That's baked into his
losing.
price.
You're already losing one opportunity to play him.
Yeah, I guess right. But if you're right, but if he is your number 4 wide receiver, then you don't have to start him.
He's the perfect number 4 wide receiver. Nobody's arguing that. I just think where's the ceiling with him this year? That's the problem.
All right, so then let's go beyond Deebo Samuel, Will Fuller, Antonio Brown. We've got anybody like any of these players? Yes, I think we do. Jarvis Landry, Curtis Samuel, Laviska Shenault, and Jalen Waddle. Landry,
I like Waddle better than Fuller just because he's healthy right now.
I like Waddle and Shenault. Waddle and Shenault are the only 2 from this group that I have over Fuller.
I have Chenault over Fuller too.
What
I
happened
have
to Curtis
full over
Samuel?
both.
Didn't everybody like Curtis Samuel once upon a time?
Just the groin injury.
The injury, man, it's so frustrating.
Well,
It's so frustrating.
and I've
But I
always
love
been really skeptical of Curtis Samuel, his production relative to the preseason love that he gets every year. And I'm just not like buying in as much to his last 6 games on a different team.
Yeah, it's not so much the last 6 games for me. The role that he had in Ron Rivera's offense in 2019 was really, really valuable. He was 9th in the league in air yards. And that was playing, like, he didn't have a good season, obviously, but that was playing with, I think the Panthers quarterbacks that season were like 20% accurate on deep passes that season, whereas Ryan Fitzpatrick over the last 2 seasons is in the 40 to 45% range. So just that alone, if he's playing a similar role to what he had the last time he played in Ron Rivera's offense, which it sounds like he will. You know, Ron Rivera, when he's asked about it, says, yeah, we'd like to get him in a preseason game, but I don't worry that much about him because he knows the offense. I just think there's a lot of upside between the potential for a downfield role and the rushing attempts that he's likely to get.
It's kind of interesting, though, because basically when Curtis Samuel has been at his best was last year when his role was completely different. You know, he was not going downfield. So you have to take what he did 2 years ago, I guess, which was not good, but then you have to blame it on the quarterback, which you absolutely could, as Chris just made the point, and say, well, he's going to be a better fit with Fitzpatrick. The other thing I'd say is if people are really freaked out about the injury, it is August 12th as we're recording this. We're a month away from the season. So this actually might be trying to get values on these guys.
I think the reason people are more discounting him for injury than others is because they've not given a timetable. And they don't
Been since May.
Yeah, he has. It's been 3 months, and we don't know when he's going to play again.
Well, he's had so much time to recover, right?
He's going to end up being a better value. You know, he was probably getting a little bit overdrafted. You know, with the way that he played last year, the fact that he's going to a team that knows him, the fact that he's going to a quarterback that's going to give him, you know, maybe the best opportunities of his career. So those things were all very encouraging, and they're still encouraging. They should be. But the longer he misses, the more Diami Brown looks better. The more Logan Thomas looks better. I mean, you know, those 2 guys have certainly taken advantage of those opportunities in training camp. And again, I say this a lot about McLaurin. Fitzpatrick's history is he leans on one guy and one guy to such a high degree that it's going to be hard to get away from McLaurin if he's that guy. Now, that's the thing you're banking on if you're taking McLaurin in the 3rd round like I am. But I think McLaurin's going to be that guy.
All right, so I think the best thing to do here is going to do the draft-o-meter. You tell me how excited you are to draft these players on a scale.
This next group is where I love
0 to 10. Well, let's do it because we didn't talk at all about Jarvis Landry. We basically glossed over Chenault.
Everybody knows who Landry is. You know what I'm talking about.
The problem is
he's Tyler Boyd.
No, he's not.
Poor man's Tyler
He's
Boyd.
Tyler Boyd with the Browns when Odell Beckham is out.
When Odell Beckham is out. You're probably going to get great value if Beckham gets hurt. Probably not if he doesn't. All right, fine. So then we'll go to the next group. Michael Gallup, Michael Pittman, Marquise Brown. We'll just do those 3 real quick. They're going from 108 to 111 overall. So 0 to 10, how excited are you to draft Michael Gallup?
4.
5.
Okay. Michael Pittman.
Same.
4.
4, 5.
6.
You better do that with the Chiefs guy too.
Pittman. No. Marquise Brown.
Healthy in this range.
Yeah.
6. And Bateman out.
Right.
He's another guy with no timetable.
Yeah.
But if you tell me Bateman's out the entire month of September, that's going to make Marquise Brown that much more attractive if he's back anytime soon.
I'll say 5.
Okay, so all these guys, Pittman, Gallup, Brown, 4 to 6 on the draft-o-meter. Next group, Mike Williams.
9.
6.
9, 6.
10.
10. Okay. The guy's never had 100 targets.
He has had 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns.
The year he had 1,000 yards, he averaged 20 yards per catch. So that was lucky.
Led the NFL. We should penalize him for doing that good thing.
Hey man, you penalize people for doing good things all the time. You say there's no way he's going to do that again. It's regression, this and that. And guess what? It hasn't happened again. So here's my problem with Mike Williams. I totally see the appeal as the number 2 guy you'd think for Herbert. One, shouldn't he have been the number 2 guy his whole career? And 2, is he going to be such a low catch guy that in full PPR, you're basically going to need him to score a touchdown most weeks for him to be good? that he
I'll tell you what scares me about Mike Williams is what you're hearing about the 3, 4, and 5 receivers for the Chargers, and that's mostly 3 and 4 because Josh Palmer is somebody that they really like, and has a chance to maybe be the third guy. But Jalen Guyton has been making a lot of plays in camp too. And this is another guy that they really like. And so how many guys do they really like? Because Keenan Allen's getting the ball, and Austin Eckler's getting the ball. And I assume Mike Williams is getting the ball. But will Mike Williams do enough, get enough opportunities, get enough targets, put it all together? I've said this before. Devontae Parker was a scrap heap guy 2 years ago, and he bounced back and played really, really well. Mm-hmm. Corey Davis was a scrap heap guy last year. He bounced back and played really, really well. Mike Williams is that guy this year. And the reason the comparison is the same is because high first-round picks in the NFL draft, that their fifth-year option wasn't picked up, and the team was basically saying, prove it or you're gone. And, one guy proved it and stayed, got a contract extension. One guy proved it and, earned a big contract somewhere else in Davis, going to the Jets. And maybe Mike Williams does that this year. But Justin Herbert's got to get him some different and better opportunities, and he's got to take advantage of those.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just at this point in the draft, you should be looking for upside, especially at wide receiver. And Mike Williams, he might be frustrating if you have to start him, but, having him, if you're in a 3 wide receiver with 1 flex league, having him as your your flex, there's going to be some weeks where he puts you at a huge advantage.
Still a lot of wide receivers that I like on the board.
He's a little bit of Bizarro Will Fuller.
Yeah, he's very efficient in terms of yards per target. Okay, so Mike Williams is high on the draft-o-meter. Henry Ruggs.
3.
2. 5, he usually doesn't go this high, I feel like.
Yeah. He's a 10 for me because he's one of my last picks.
He's got league-winning type of potential if he hits, but it's a lot to ask for that to happen.
We're evaluating these numbers at their ADP and at their place within the wide receivers, right? Not at the place that we would like them.
I think, you know what? I think we should stop doing that because I think at this point, especially now that we're at pick 120, all right, we're past round 10. These guys could go in any order, depending on your draft. So just tell me who you like the most. Just tell me.
I like the next 2 guys a lot more than I like Henry Ruggs.
Darnell Mooney and Mecole Hardman.
Yes.
Do you like?
Yes, for sure.
Do you like them better than Mike Williams?
I think I have it Hardman, Williams, Mooney, but they're all in the same range.
Same, all in the same range.
Devontae,
come on, dude, play the music. Do it.
No, Devontae Parker, Hardman, Devontae Parker, Devontae Parker, Marvin Jones, Corey Davis.
Jones' ADP is going to rise.
Wait. Mecole Hardman bet. He gets 100 yards in a game receiving this season, and you do that.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Let's make it 10 yards. I'm really excited to do it. So just 10 yards. No, 100 yards, fine. Parker, Marvin Jones, Corey Davis, Cole Beasley. They say any names?
Yeah, Jones is a great value.
Mecole Hardman is a lottery ticket.
Yeah, we're past him, JB.
I like it though.
He's definitely in that Mike Williams, Henry Ruggs, Marquise Brown mold.
I just drafted him today. I was very happy about it. We got all right. So, who's your favorite Jets wide receiver?
Elijah Moore should be ahead of this group.
I agree.
Elijah Moore is probably my favorite Jets wide receiver, pending the results of an MRI.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Marvin Jones or Elijah Moore?
I'm taking Elijah Moore unless you tell me DJ Chark's out for the season.
I'm taking Marvin.
I would rather have Moore.
All right, Cole Beasley, T.Y. Hilton, Russell Gage. Cole Beasley, Hilton, Gage. Beasley, can he just be what he was last year?
I think, it sounds like Manny Sanders might have taken that over. They can't stop talking about how good he's been in camp. And, the games he played without Michael Thomas last season, I think he was on like almost an 1,100 yard pace. So Manny Sanders somehow still has a lot left in the tank, seemingly.
Unless they get rid of Stephon Diggs, though. I don't want to trust it.
Okay, so
they're going to cannibalize each other. I mean, Beasley's not going away, barring something wacky with his personal feelings. But if Beasley's there and Sanders is there and Davis is there, I think all three of those guys are going to kind of negate each other a little bit.
Would you rather have who's your favorite in that group? Beasley, Hilton, Gage?
Hilton.
Hilton still for me.
Yeah.
All right, so then you've got all the rookies.
Aren't you obligated to say Hilton in every answer?
Yes. Go FIU.
FIU.
See the claw.
And you've got a lot of rookies. You got Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman. You've got guys like Nelson Aguilar, although should Jacoby Myers, if you're drafting a Patriots wide receiver, should it be Jacoby Myers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Terrace Marshall and Jacoby Myers and Sterling Shepard, the three guys that you hadn't said yet that I really would like to draft next.
Yes. Agreed.
I'll
Yes,
throw Rondale Moore in that as well.
Yes, Rondale Moore, definitely.
Sterling Shepard is basically 5-6 catches a game with Daniel Jones. He's been the best receiver in camp so far.
I wrote about post-type sleepers on the site, and he's one of them. His numbers over the last 2 seasons are basically identical to Jarvis Landry and Tyler Boyd's. I know there have been extenuating circumstances, and he's got Kenny Golladay now, but Sterling Shepard's been an underrated PPR guy the last couple of seasons.
I was disappointed because I made a pro Giants tweet last night, and Adam didn't even acknowledge it.
I didn't see it. What did it say?
Sterling Shepard has been better per game over the past 2 seasons than Odell Beckham.
How is that possible?
Because he's caught 25 more passes.
Oh, well.
Yeah, Shepard was wide receiver 34 in points per game last season.
That is better than Odell Beckham was last year.
Yeah, he does, but he has not done anything but catch the ball, basically. The
Right. He has one fewer. He has one fewer touchdown than Beckham in those 2 years. So
You've done nothing but your job.
No, he doesn't do anything with it. The interesting thing is I don't know how much he played in the slot last year, but they had Golden Tate. He's the slot guy this year. So yeah, it's a
playing for a contract.
I think there's very little upside, but
right.
If you didn't draft a lot of wide receivers early, I think he's a perfectly fine 5th guy who can slot into your flex.
Jamie, have you actually been in any leagues deep enough to draft Amon-Ra St. Brown, or is he kind of a waiver wire guy?
Oh no, I've taken him in some leagues. I was a little upset when he went in the flex draft before I had a chance to draft him. I think I forget to draft him, so I'm not gonna say it. But I think guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Bryan Edwards now, somebody to keep an eye on with the fact that he's a starter for the Raiders and the vacated targets from Nelson Aguilar. Marcus Callaway, depending on how long Traquan Smith is out. Traquan Smith still, because I think he's getting overlooked.
Pick one.
Marshall.
Pick a Saints guy.
Callaway.
I'm still Traquan because I don't want to rule him out yet unless he's going to miss the start of the season. But Callaway is very, very close. They're both in a similar situation that until Michael Thomas comes back, they're both going to be the 2nd and 3rd best wide receivers behind Taysom Hill.
Any interest in Sammy Watkins?
Getting some, not yet, but getting some.
If he's going to be somebody that I'm going to be adding off of waivers that first week when we get to make waivers ads, if Marquise Brown isn't back,
Right?
Because he does get the Raiders and Chiefs the first 2 weeks of the season, and he might be the number 1 wide receiver on the team. And he's scored 22 fantasy points per game in week 1 the last 2 years. So
Nice, I like it. And AJ Green, Jalen Reagor, Gabriel Davis. Manuel Sanders.
All interesting. Very, very interesting guys. But they're in this range for a reason.
Okay. All right. We don't have time to get to everybody. So we gave you a bunch of names. This would be the time where I talked about Amari Rodgers, but that's not going to happen anymore. So I'm going to wrap things up here. Thanks to Chris and Jamie and Heath. If you didn't want to hear an hour and 15 minutes, you can listen to Fantasy Football Today in 5. We give you basically all of our episodes in 5-minute versions of it. So check out that podcast if you don't have time for the full-length show. All right, we will talk to you tomorrow with a mailbag at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com and your Apple Podcast questions. We'll talk to you then on Fantasy Football.